My mom yelled, "If you're so smart, then pay your own bills," in front of everyone. And in that exact moment, something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, like a fault line finally giving way after years of pressure. My name is Alyssa Morgan. I was 24 years old then, living at home, not because I was lazy or incapable, but because I had spent the last 6 years being the family's invisible backbone while being treated like a burden. That sentence, those exact words, weren't said in private, weren't said in frustration behind closed doors. They were shouted across the dining table at a Sunday family dinner, with my aunt, uncle, cousins, and even my younger brother watching in uncomfortable silence. And the worst part? My mom looked proud when she said it, like she'd finally put me in my place. Growing up, I was always the responsible one. My brother Jake was 2 years younger than me, loud, charming, and permanently forgiven for everything. If he broke something, it was an accident. If I made a mistake, it was a disappointment. When Dad passed away suddenly from a heart attack when I was 17, everything changed overnight. Mom fell apart, and I stepped in. I took care of paperwork, cooked dinners, helped Jake with school, and worked part-time through college so Mom wouldn't have to worry about bills. I didn't complain, I didn't ask for praise. I told myself this was what family did. After graduation, I landed a solid job as a data analyst at a mid-sized tech firm. It paid well, not wildly, but enough that I could have moved out. Instead, Mom insisted I stay. "Why waste money on rent?" she said. "You can help here, save for your future." What she really meant was help her future. I paid for groceries, I covered utilities when Mom forgot. I even quietly paid Jake's auto insurance after he totaled his first car and Mom didn't want to stress him out. Slowly, without ever discussing it, I became the financial buffer that kept the household afloat. But no matter how much I contributed, I was never treated like an adult, just a resource. That Sunday dinner was supposed to be casual. Mom invited relatives over to celebrate my aunt's promotion. I'd spent the whole morning cooking, cleaning, setting the table. Jake showed up an hour late, empty-handed, and was greeted with smiles and jokes. During dinner, my uncle asked about my job. I mentioned I'd recently been promoted, that I was leading a new project. Before I could finish, Mom cut in with a laugh. "Well, if she's so smart, maybe she can finally start paying her own bills instead of living off me." The table went silent. I felt heat rush to my face. My aunt gave a tight smile. My cousins stared at their plates. Jake smirked, taking a sip of soda like this was entertainment. I looked at Mom, waiting for her to soften it, to add a joke, to say she didn't mean it. She didn't. She leaned back in her chair and added, "Honestly, it's embarrassing. 24 and still at home?" Something in me snapped, not into anger, but into clarity. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. My voice was calm, almost eerily so. "I pay the electric bill," I said. "I buy the groceries. I covered Jake's insurance for 6 months. And I paid the property tax last year when you said you didn't have enough." Mom's face flushed. "That's none of their business," she snapped. "You made it their business when you embarrassed me," I replied. Jake laughed. "Relax, Alyssa. She's just saying you should move out if you're so independent." I looked at him and smiled. "You're right." That smile confused them. They thought I was bluffing. They didn't know that in that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. I went to my room, grabbed my laptop, and locked the door. My hands didn't shake. I logged into my bank account and reviewed every transaction from the past 2 years. Utilities, groceries, insurance, emergency repairs. I realized something terrifying and empowering at the same time. I wasn't living off my mother. She was living off me, and she'd gotten comfortable insulting the very person keeping her stable. That night, I didn't argue, I didn't cry. I packed a small overnight bag and booked a hotel near my office. I left a note on the kitchen counter. "You're right. I'll pay my own bills from now on." I turned off my phone. The next morning, my phone was flooded. Missed calls, texts ranging from fake concern to outright rage. "Mom, where are you? This is immature." "Jake, you seriously left over a joke?" Mom again, "You're abandoning your family." I didn't respond. Instead, I went to work, requested PTO for the rest of the week, and started apartment hunting during lunch. For the first time in years, I thought only about myself. By Friday, I'd signed a lease on a small but beautiful one-bedroom apartment downtown. Sunlight poured through the windows. It felt like possibility. That evening, I did something else. I canceled all auto payments connected to my mom's house. Electric, canceled. Internet, canceled. Grocery delivery, canceled. Jake's insurance, canceled. All of it. I didn't announce it. I didn't explain. I simply stopped. The fallout came faster than I expected. On Sunday morning, Mom showed up at my apartment unannounced. I hadn't given her the address. She must have pressured Jake to check my location history from when I used his car once. She looked frantic, hair unbrushed, phone clutched in her hand. "The power's out," she said breathlessly. "The internet too. And Jake's insurance bounced. What did you do?" I leaned against the doorframe, calm. "I'm paying my own bills now." Her mouth fell open. "You can't just— Alyssa, this is your home." "No," I said gently. "It was a place where I paid to be disrespected." She scoffed. "So this is revenge? You're punishing us?" "I'm respecting myself," I replied. She tried guilt next. "After everything I've done for you?" I smiled sadly. "That's exactly the problem. Everything was transactional, but only when it benefited you." She left furious, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. That night, Jake texted me, "Mom's freaking out. She can't cover everything. Maybe you should come back until things settle." I typed, deleted, then finally replied, "Figure it out. You're smart, remember?" I lay on my couch, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding, not with fear, but with something new. Freedom, and underneath it a quiet anticipation, because I wasn't done yet. They thought this was a tantrum, a phase. They had no idea that the woman they'd dismissed as a leech was about to show them exactly how much value she'd been carrying and what happens when you take it for granted. By the time I packed my last box, the house already felt unfamiliar, like it had rejected me the same way my mother had at that dinner table. Mom's words, "If you're so smart, then pay your own bills," kept looping in my head, not as an insult anymore, but as a challenge she never expected me to accept. I didn't slam doors or announce my departure. I left quietly at dawn, loading my car while the neighborhood slept, the air cool and sharp like a clean cut. I drove straight to my Aunt Diane's small guest house on the edge of town, the one place Mom never controlled. Diane didn't ask questions when she saw the boxes. She just hugged me and said, "Stay as long as you need." That alone told me I'd made the right choice. Within a week, I had redirected my paycheck, changed my mailing address, and canceled every auto payment tied to my mother's household. Phone plan? Mine now. Insurance? Mine now. Streaming services she used nightly? Gone. I wasn't being petty. I was being precise. Independence isn't loud. It's thorough. Mom noticed the silence first. No morning texts asking where things were, no late-night calls demanding I handle it because I was the responsible one. When she finally called, I let it ring. The second call, I answered. Her voice was sharp with irritation, not concern. She demanded to know why the internet was out, why the grocery delivery hadn't come, why the electricity notice mentioned final warning. I told her calmly that she'd asked me to pay my own bills, and I was doing exactly that, just not hers. She accused me of being dramatic, ungrateful, selfish. I didn't argue. I simply said, "I'm doing what you told me to do." Then I hung up. That was the moment the balance shifted. What Mom didn't know was that I'd been keeping records for years. Every time she asked me to cover a shortfall, every temporary loan that never got repaid, every bill in my name because her credit couldn't handle it. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning freedom. But documentation has a way of becoming power when someone pushes too far. A week later, she tried to force the issue publicly. At my cousin's engagement party, she cornered me in front of relatives and laughed, loud enough for everyone to hear, saying I'd run off because I couldn't handle real life. She said I'd be back begging by the end of the month. I smiled and let her finish. Then I pulled out my phone and calmly transferred the title of the car, my car, out of her driveway lease agreement and into my own. I mentioned, politely, that the insurance was already switched and the payments were mine. The room went quiet. Someone asked, "Wait, that's your car?" Mom's face froze. I didn't explain further. I didn't need to. The next escalation came fast. She tried guilt, then anger, then fear. She told family I was unstable. She told my employer I was distracted and unreliable. That last move crossed a line she couldn't uncross. My boss called me in, not to reprimand me, but to ask what was going on. I told the truth. I showed him the messages. He thanked me for being transparent and documented the interference. That same afternoon, I filed a formal notice to remove my name from any remaining shared accounts and sent my mother a written summary of what I'd covered over the years, with dates and amounts. No threats, no insults, just facts. She didn't respond. Silence can be loud when it's the first time someone can't bully their way through it. Then came the family meeting. Mom demanded one, framing it as clearing the air. We met at my aunt's place. She arrived with a rehearsed speech about respect and family loyalty, about how I owed her because she raised me. I let her talk. When she finished, I placed a folder on the table. Inside were copies of everything: the bills, the loans, the messages, the times she'd told me to handle things because I was smart enough. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I said, "I took your advice. I learned to stand on my own. I'm not a leech. I was a lifeline." My aunt backed me up. So did two cousins who'd quietly relied on me over the years. Mom tried to interrupt. No one let her. For the first time, she wasn't the loudest voice in the room. The reversal wasn't explosive, it was definitive. She asked if I was cutting her off. I said no, I was setting boundaries. If she wanted a relationship, it would be adult to adult, not parent to provider. No public insults, no financial dependence, no rewriting history. She scoffed and said she didn't need me anyway. I nodded and stood up. "Then this should be easy," I said, and left. 2 days later, she called again, this time quieter. She asked how to set up a payment plan with a utility company. I sent her the number. I didn't do it for her. Months passed. My life expanded in the space she had vacated. I took a class I'd always postponed. I traveled for a weekend without asking permission. I slept better. The narrative shifted slowly but surely. People noticed Mom complaining more, borrowing more, losing the audience she used to command. I wasn't triumphant about it. I was peaceful. The best kind of revenge isn't destruction, it's independence that makes the old control obsolete. The last conversation we had changed everything. She asked, almost softly, why I didn't just apologize and come back. I told her the truth, because I finally listened when she told me to pay my own bills, and in doing so, I learned my worth wasn't measured by what I covered for others. There was a long pause. She didn't apologize, but she didn't insult me either. For us, that was a beginning. I didn't pack my bags to punish her, I packed them to save myself. And when she told me to stand on my own, she never imagined I'd do it so completely, without her.